Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the panel discussion before the break. That was one of the highlights of my public career. These trailblazers have served our communities, our state, and our nation well. To conclude day one, we will hear from the Honorable Steve Benjamin. Steve Benjamin was elected mayor of Columbia, South Carolina in April of 2010 with the vision of transforming South Carolina's capital city into a talented, educated, and entrepreneurial city of the New South. He served as mayor until December of 2021. Prior to his service as mayor, Benjamin served in South Carolina Governor Jim Hodges' cabinet as the chief executive of a $43 million, 950 employee state agency. Under Mayor Benjamin leadership in Columbia incurred budget surpluses of 8 out of 11 years, cut property taxes by over $12 million over a decade, revitalized Columbia's central business district, seeing nearly $2 billion in downtown capital investment, invested $750 million in water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure improvements, fully restored the city's reserve fund, which was hit hard during the financial crisis, issued the nation's first standalone stormwater green bonds to be certified by the Climate Bond Initiative, and opened the doors of the city's first LEED Gold certified building, invested in 21st century policing by establishing the Justice for All initiative for greater community engagement, diversity, training, and accountability for law enforcement, established the position of Poet Laureate for the city of Columbia, and invested millions in the city's art and cultural infrastructure. Benjamin is a graduate of the University of South Carolina and the University of South Carolina School of Law, where he served as president of student government and as president of the Student Bar Association. He currently serves as president and CEO of the Benjamin Law Firm, LLC. He is married to the Honorable DeAndrea Gist Benjamin, a judge in South Carolina's 5th Judicial Circuit. The Benjamins are the proud parents of 2 daughters and are members of the St. John Baptist Church in Columbia, South Carolina. Welcome, the Honorable Steve Benjamin.
Senator, thank you for reading that just like I wrote it. I very much appreciate that. It really is an honor to be with you today. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. This is my hotel room attending the African American Mayors Association annual conference, in which we're talking about obviously so many of the same issues that you all are talking about, how in fact we energize our communities for the incredibly changing and challenging landscape that we're engaged in right now, and particularly the education and preservation of our youth is at the top of that list. I want to share some thoughts with you briefly. When my friend Courtney Crowder called me and asked me if I would speak. You know, although I've served in office for over a decade and served, of course, a former governor, I've never enjoyed public speaking, probably like many of you. It kind of ranks up there with the fear of spiders and the fear of heights. So every time I get asked to speak, I think of the first time I spoke in my home church, the St. John Baptist Church in Columbia. When I was done, a little guy came up to me. He said, "Now grow up, I'm gonna give you some money." I said, "Well, thank you, son, but why?" He said, "Because my father said you're the poorest speaker we ever had." It's Tuesday morning, June 22nd, 1954. A young woman named Sarah Mae Fleming, a domestic worker, is standing on the corner of Washington and Main Streets in downtown Columbia, waiting for the bus to take her to work. Her 21st birthday is just 6 days away. And maybe that's what she's thinking about, wondering if someone's planning a party for her or if she'll get some time off to celebrate. Maybe she's thinking about the weather, the thick, humid heat that blankets our state from May to September. Maybe she's just preoccupied with the task at hand, planning the day before her. Just a few weeks earlier, the United States Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, had issued its historic ruling in Brown versus the Topeka, Kansas Board of Education, overturning nearly 60 years of precedent and declaring for the first time in American history that the old segregationist principle of separate but equal was unconstitutional. So it's possible that she was thinking about that, but she never could have imagined that in less than 2 years, Chief Justice Warren would know her name, that the Supreme Court would be deciding her fate, and that her actions would echo across history for the next several years. It's Tuesday morning, June 22nd, 1954, and Sarah Mae Fleming can't possibly imagine what's about to happen when she steps on that bus and finds the only open seat that she can find. She doesn't see it coming, the outrage and humiliation, the shouting insults and the assault, the clenched fist punching into her gut. She doesn't see it coming, but neither did they. They couldn't have imagined this young woman from Eastover, South Carolina, beaten and cast aside, would have the courage to get back up, the audacity to sue the bus company, and the steel spine to see it through, laying the foundation in action and in law for another woman in Montgomery, Alabama named Rosa Parks the next year. You see, Sarah Mae Fleming wasn't looking for a fight. She wasn't looking for a cause, and she wasn't looking for history. History found her, and she chose to act. In the good book, the prophet Isaiah speaks of his mighty dream in which the heavens open up, the vision of terrible majesty, the full host of angels, and God himself stood before him. Isaiah was awestruck and frightened. He cried out, "Woe is me, for I'm undone. For I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." You see, Isaiah was a sinner, just like the rest of us. He was small, insignificant, and imperfect before the full glory of heaven. He was terrified and shaken. But when the Lord asked, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" Isaiah gathered his strength to stand and said, "I will. Here am I. Send me. Here am I. Send me." Sarah Mae Fleming was looking for a fight. She wasn't looking for a cause, and she wasn't looking for history. History found her. God called her, she'd tell you. And she answered, "Here am I. Send me." We've been blessed, brothers and sisters. The example of Mrs. Fleming, what became Mrs. Fleming Brown, a name that I'm sure many of you may have heard today for the very first time, of seemingly ordinary people doing extraordinary things that laid the foundation of possibility for me to stand before you, having had the opportunity to serve the city that I love in ways I never imagined as a child. And for each and every one of you to hold the positions of honor that you hold now and the opportunity to serve your communities, that spirit inspires me. I'm proud and honored to be on this call with you today because we're stepping into I believe, an even more challenging period of American history. It's one thing when you live in a world that doesn't have all the opportunities, where we're separate and unequal, where opportunity does not exist for each and every one of us. It's there now, but there are real barriers in place, and those barriers in place have become more profound, it's been a lot tougher, particularly for our children, the very first generation of the last 100 years that's expected to do worse than the generation before them. Think about that a little bit. As we think about folks like Sarah Mae Fleming, people like Medgar Evers, and people like Julius Chambers and Honorable Judge Matthew J. Perry, so many people who have laid the foundation for us, who've answered the call to justice, the call to leadership, the call to action. When God asks, "Who will I send? Who will go for us?" They'll raise their hands and say, "Here am I, send me." I hope to inspire you to continue to lead as much as you can, as hard as you can, on behalf of the communities that we represent. Fight for the young people in our communities who don't have access to broadband, who can't focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic, not because of broadband, because they're growing up in communities and sometimes homes that won't give them the very basics that they need to do what they need to do, understanding that schools don't fail. Adults fail children. It's up to us to provide the inspired leadership to give these young people just a chance to live up to their God-given potential. They need us to fight for them every single day. They need us to make them our cause, to recognize that we've inherited a world paid for by the blood, sweat, and tears of men and women who came before us. And now these children, these young people in our communities are standing on our shoulders, waiting for us to deliver just the same for them. I'm thankful to be on this call with you because, again, in your communities, people know you. In your state, people know you. While people might not necessarily know you in every single community across this country, some of you, they do, I know. You are doing the real work, leading with your own time, talents, and treasures right now, building communities. Your name, just like the Sarah Mae Flemings of the world, your service, your action, your leadership will again lay the foundation for these communities. We need to be on that bus with the next little Sarah Mae Fleming. We need to be in that park to protect the future of the next Tamir Rice. We need to be on that dirty figurative Minneapolis street, fighting for George Floyd to be treated like the child of God that he was. The heavens have opened up as they did for Isaiah. The problem is, if you excuse me, sometimes it feels like hell has opened up too. We're emerging from the greatest pandemic since 1918. Likely to see the greatest economic challenges we've seen in an election year since 1932, and still working through the leftovers of the greatest social unrest our communities have seen since 1968, all wrapped up in the last 2 years. The challenges before us are significant, and it's going to require us to fight like our lives depend on it, to make sure we fight the evils of poverty, we fight the evils of structural racism, fight the evils of our health disparities. In South Carolina, in my state, the place that has given me everything that I have, if you're born a Black or brown child in our state of South Carolina, you have a less chance of seeing your first birthday than a child born in Cuba, Panama, or Botswana. The challenges are real still in the wealthiest, most powerful nation in the history of the world. That poverty manifests itself in the education of our children. Again, our kids have every bit of talent they need to survive in this world. We have to make sure that they have the opportunity, the luxury of being children, provide them with the shelter, the safety, security, the love, the support, and education they need to do the great things that God has in store for them. And if we do that, then our communities will have the economic security that they need to make sure that we all participate in the American dream the way that we should. Right now, we have untold sums of capital coming back to our communities from Washington, D.C. And make it clear, coming back to our communities. The money that is in Washington where I am right now doesn't fall like manna from heaven. It's our money coming back to our communities in historic amounts. The transportation and the infrastructure bill, the American Rescue Plan, the CARES Act bills. We're seeing untold sums coming home. We have to be very careful and creative to look at how we deliver solutions in an intergovernmental, intersectoral way, the type of collaboration we saw at the beginning of the pandemic. We had people, leaders in communities talking to each other, working together, as we were all trying to fight this threat, this invisible threat. We started working together in ways untold before. We need that same level of collaboration as we move forward and decide how we're going to deliver these resources in ways that are strategic, that will meet our needs for posterity, not for 2022, not even 2032, but we should be thinking about 2052 and how we work with not only our fellow government folks, but the private sector, with philanthropic organizations, and anybody who's willing to do good on behalf of the public. We should be open and strategic, but that starts with us working together to articulate our principles, articulate our values, make sure people understand what we want in our communities to make them great. And of course, you do that every single day, but the best way to do it is do what my grandmother always told me. God gave you, boy, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. Spend time with the people you represent. Spend time with the people you work with every single day, and just ask them what keeps you up at night. What keeps you up at night? And if you listen closely, you will find the answers or your solutions. Surround yourself sometimes with people who don't share your worldview. Understand that 2 people equally yoked can see the same thing and see it very differently. And that's the power of diversity. You sit there, you talk through tough issues, and then you work on solving problems together. The people that we represent are often the people who need public sector leadership the very most, need it the most, the communities who need it the most. So they count on us, not to admire problems, but figure out how we're going to solve those problems. Be pragmatic enough to never compromise your principles, but always realize that we have to solve problems. And that means we have to work together, we have to dialogue and focus on a solution that works for our communities. We can do it. I know that we can. I want to thank you for having me with you and give me your ear for a moment. I hope and pray that the rest of your conference is a huge success, and pray that God gives you the wisdom to always keep your lives in order. I don't know everyone's faith tradition on this wonderful Zoom call, but I know that my faith tradition has always served me in my leadership journey to keep my priorities in order. That means I'm a child of God, I'm a husband and a father, I work to earn a living for my family, and then I'm an elected official, recognizing that that is the right leadership approach that helps me keep my priorities in order and always serve my community every single day. I hope and pray that as you take this journey, that you will always keep your priorities in order, which means also taking care of yourself. As you take this journey, and the jobs are hard right now. It's tougher to lead in this country now, probably than it has been in a very long time. I want you to treat this as if you're juggling balls. You have glass balls and you have rubber balls. The glass balls are things that matter most. Your emotional health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your family, your friends, physical health. This one temple that God's given each and every one of us. He's only given us one. You protect those glass balls as the most important things in your life. You polish them. You tell your family, the people who love you in spite of yourself, you tell them how much they mean to you. You make sure that you nurture and protect your glass balls. You drop them, it could take a lifetime to repair. Rubber balls, politics, sometimes a job that might not be good to you. Folks who don't want to treat you well. Those rubber balls, they always bounce back. Protect your glass balls. Keep your personal health in order, because quite frankly, if you can't take care of yourself, you're not taking care of anyone else. Thank you. May God bless you and keep you on this journey of leadership. And Senator, I'm going to kick it back to you. Thank you so much.
We want to thank our panelists, special guest presenters, and those who worked behind the scene to make Day One possible. All sessions have been recorded and will be available on the conference website. Tomorrow, we have a great lineup of 3 informative breakout sessions, and we will conclude with the Jeannie H. Lucas virtual luncheon. Please have a safe and restful evening, and we will see you bright and early tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.